welcome to report out for this first trial of an organisational-wide RPIW approach to a kind of pressing and focused challenge. First of all, just a big thank you for the week. We'll run this report out in the way that we would normally run a report out, but just to start with, I do want to thank everybody on the call and many others for really mobilising around this and stepping up to look at this real challenge and pressure that we face ourselves. We find ourselves facing at the end of month one. We will remind ourselves that what we'd set ourselves to do was to put a position around our variable pay control, and just to repeat the kind of target state that we described last Thursday in that urgent meeting that we called. You can see that there. I'm not going to read it out, but just to reiterate why we're doing this around our 8.6 million deficit at month one, our challenge around our growth in both substantive and bank staff, and the need to control this whilst we maintain safe care. Apparent before we started this week that there was a significant variation in process across the trust, but you can see our target condition set out there, and let's hold on to that target condition, because as we hear from teams with all the hard work we've done, we can see where we are on that journey against what we set ourselves, maintaining safety and quality, 35% reduction in variable pay expenditure, daily management processes embedded, because clearly we can't do an RPIW on this scale on a constant basis, but also we spread good ideas and the learning across the trust. I think what we have found this week, before we hand over to our teams to report, but we have maintained, I think, our patient safety focus. We've been looking at that on a daily basis. I'm hoping that our teams will have felt both empowered to make their own decisions around these issues, but also that the accountable Leeds Way value has been very much to the fore. We've done this in a locally deployed way, and I really hope that we'll hear that staff have had chance to feedback and that leadership's been inclusive here. And the ethos of Leeds Improvement is its collaborative nature. Key learning, I think, from this week, we know a lot more about either what we don't know or what we weren't doing than we did this time last week. We've heard through the week that teams feel much more clear on what they're looking for and the kind of questions to ask. The issues that need resolution become clearer. Management information, data quality, as always, is really helpful in moving effectively forward. And using the systems we've already got in place, particularly around policies and guidance, and making sure that we're consistent and fair in our application of those. A focus on what is driving our variable pay spend rather than just looking at the numbers themselves, and I think that's been a real message that's come across as the week has progressed. And finally, as we set ourselves, how do we get all of this into daily management so that from next week on we can retain a real laser focus around the work, but obviously continue to do that in the context of a tricky operational time and with all the other priorities that you've all got in your day-to-day and week-to-week work. I'm handing over now, I think, to Simon to take us through some of the detail, and then we're going to hear from some of our teams. Thanks, Simon.
Okay, Phil, and just want to say from me, thanks to everybody for the huge effort and focus we've had this week on this very important issue. So I've just got a couple of slides which are extracts from our executive production board, and this first one was just estimating using the ready reckoners that colleagues have been using, the sort of gap between where we are and where we need to be. And you know, those ready reckoners, we carry on going forward as part of our sustainable approach, sort of filling those in, and over time we will get everything on the roster system. But in the meantime, when we haven't got everything on the roster system, we do need to use those ready reckoners to help us understand where we are on a weekly basis. So the gap we've got predicted for the week that finished last week was 315,000 in the week. So that's 315,000. We're off the target. At the start of this week, we were looking at a £305,000 gap, and looking into next week, 218,000. Okay, so you can see we've got a gap, but on that information, it is improving, and that triangulates with the essentially over the week. We've either implemented in week, not counting today and over the weekend, or have got ideas for the future about £112,000 worth of improvement. Okay, and as with all things, Pareto principle applies. So some of those improvements are, you know, there's some really big improvements in some CSUs and more modest in others. I know there's been learning across the board, but we've had a really great start here in terms of moving us on our journey. But it was still a way to go, is what that production board is telling us. Okay, so I'll leave it there, Phil, if that's all right.
Thanks very much, Simon. As Simon said, really great start, lots of learning, but the beginning of the challenge rather than an end in itself. So really important to see the movement in the right direction. Okay, let's get straight on to our CSUs who very kindly agreed to report out. So we're going to start with urgent care. Priyanka, Kirsten, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Hello, my name is Priyanka Kumari, General Manager in Urgent Care. So what we did this week, I think before that, Phil, what I would like to say is that the CSU has absolutely embraced this week in that spirit, and it's been great for us. So we had been doing some pieces of work around the medical staffing, around the daily management for quite some time. So we have built up on that work this week. For example, stopping super surge or really good control on the agency spend. But the first thing we did this week is engaging with our staff. That early communication with the senior leaders, so they know the situation, they are engaged in the process, and they are involved in it. And it was equally important that as a TRI team, we are visible within the areas to answer any questions, because it was a huge changes that we were making within the CSU. So we are there to listen to them and to answer any questions. We really used the production board this week to identify those opportunities in terms of unavailable hours within our roster, which has been really massively helpful for us. And we did take a deep dive into our roster management. So it's not just about the numbers on the shop floor, but also the skill mix, which has kind of helped us take some of those decisions that we never thought we could take before. So, for example, the risk that we've taken is calculated, which we didn't think we could do it in the past. So the savings that we've made is based on some of that visibility of the information that has allowed us to do so. What we did in terms of the tool, that we have introduced a new daily huddle for our medical staffing, which has looked at around the daily need approach. So periodically, it used to happen that we will send a bank shift out to advert for any gaps to fill up to the establishment or plan numbers. But now we're looking at the need basis, depending on who is in, what is the demand like, and make a decision. We are doing a lot of small PDSAs, for example, how we are rostering the staff, people who are involved in that, using the tools of the daily management in there across the CSU, in admin, nursing, and in medical as well. We used to have a lot of feast and famine in our staff, that one day there will be lots of staff and one day there won't be, and that resulted in a lot of bank use. We've standardized our medical roster, which has resulted in reduction in the gaps that we currently have, which has been great. How did we engage with our staff? I think it was being open and honest. with them and really listening to our staff, what they have to say, and involving them. And we really felt that we have been able to brought the staff along on this journey this week. So the outcome has been that because we could take that calculated risk, we have saved about 1,500 hours on the variable pay this week. But we are continue to review our staffing and adjusting appropriately across the CSU. We had an escalation process, but in kind of this week, the learning that we have had, we are going to review our escalation process, including the out of hours, because that's where we think some of the daily management falls apart. So the tools that we have used in terms of the assessment, that we're going to continue with our daily medical rota team huddle with a tri-team representation, because what that has done is that some of that difficult decision making is not sitting with a lower paid member of staff within the CSU, and there is senior representation to make that assessment and judgments. We will continue with the action tracker that was developed as part of the RPIW to make sure the momentum is there and the visibility is there on the actions that is being taken. Because what we found this week was so helpful that we will hold our mini improvement weeks each quarter within the CSU to continue to build on the improvement that we have made this week. We are using our nursing production board, but we will work with the PLIX team to develop something for the medical team and continue to use those. What we identified that we need to put probably greater focus, and we will work collaboratively with SIM colleagues to define a workforce model for medical team for acute medicine and STEC and other areas where we feel more appropriate to do so. The metrics we had been looking at this week is the reduction in the use of variable pay, but on the balance of safety and the quality, which we were getting from our staff throughout this week. But we will establish more governance process around it to continue to monitor on the balance of the safety and the quality. Thank you. Now I'll hand it over to Kirsten.
Hi everybody, my name is Kirsten Leach and I'm the Head of Nursing for Urgent Care. So what went well for us this week? So I think firstly, as Priyanka's already said, we really did have fantastic engagement from all of our teams. So a really big shout out to them and a big thank you. I think we now all have a better understanding of our finances running alongside our establishments and our capacity and demand piece, which is going to be really helpful and useful going forward in the next few weeks. We were able to give 100% of our attention to this RPIW, which has really supported the changes, mostly really in the nursing rosters and the processes that we had. We've had excellent support and guidance from our improvement team, so thank you to them as well. And I think importantly, we've all learnt together over this last week, which was really important. And also what went well was having that clear goal for us all to aim for. What we would do differently, so I don't think it'd be a surprise for me to say that a bit more time to plan and communicate with our teams so that they're really on board and understanding fully, and that goes through all of our staffing, not just the senior teams, and that we were really clear from the start what's expected, really. Key learnings, so as Priyanka's always said, it's really important for us to be open and honest with all of our teams. And it's been a really helpful exercise around the roster management, as I've said, particularly with the nurses and the CSWs. And I think that's probably where a lot of our changes have happened in this first week. But as Priyanka said, that will continuously be reviewed along with our teams, listening to their feedback. So the next steps for us, so as Priyanka said, we're going to continue with our PDSA processes. We're going to look at the impact that changes have made, especially with regards to our quality of care and our staff satisfaction. So that's quite important in the next week. And we're going to follow up on our actions identified for future savings. And finally, what's really important going forward is that we don't lose our enthusiasm and our motivation to continue to make improvements within our CSU. Thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thanks, Priyanka and Kirsten. Really great. Some really great reflections and thinking there about what you're doing. You can see the lots and lots of applause. So well done. Really good. And some really useful reflections for next week onwards. So thanks very much. In the spirit of our report out, let's go straight to AMS. So we've got Mark.
Hello, Phil. Thank you very much.
Hi, Mark.
So, hello everyone. My name is Mark Richards. I'm the Deputy Head of Nursing for AMS. I'm here to talk about the project that we've been working on within AMS and our nursing bank spend. We looked at this from the end of the financial year last year as a HON team and realised that we'd got a significant unsustainable overspend within our nursing budgets, despite an increase in our substantive staff. And we worked up plans in terms around how we would produce some standard work to support improvement in this and linking that to our roster KPIs. So we were fortunate to get early access to the production board created by Vinod and his team. So we got access to that from the 25th of March, and that gave us that retrospective look back to the 26th of February. So we quickly worked through that and looked, and we realised that we were spending around about £40,000 a week overspend compared to our budget within our nursing rosters. Drilling that down a bit further, we looked and we could see that was around £60,000 of that a week spend was through temporary staffing costs, and that was somewhere we wanted to try and tackle. We looked at our CSU unavailability, and that came out at 30% as an average compared to 23%, which is on the roster calculators. And to put that into context, that's around 74.5 whole-time equivalents in additional unavailability than what's planned into our rosters and into our budget. We also noted variability in staff sickness across all of our teams, and the variability in study leave that was approved. So there's lots of opportunities for us to produce some standard work around that. How we've gone about this in terms of daily management approach. So we've implemented an AMS staff bank approval process. And like I say, we've linked that into our roster KPIs. So we've looked at linking in with the roster production timetable. So the roster from the 22nd of April 24, we've produced a process where the ward leaders and matrons request staff bank shifts at time of roster build to take them to stop the line. And we match that to our vacancy, maternity leave and long-term sickness per team. So we're really getting down into that detailed level of requirement. And we've had fantastic collaboration with our ward leaders and matrons. And we've sort of, in the true Leeds improvement methodology style, we've done that with that constant refinement and constant learning throughout the process. So phase one, we looked at those preemptive requests. So as I've mentioned, around that roster production date, we've then looked about how we then log those requests in real time as the weeks come up, and then as phase two, and then as phase three, we're looking at those overtime requests as well. We've made sure there's good governance around that in terms of recording our decision-making process, and then linking that back to accountability, working in collaboration with our staff bank team, who have provided us with a Monday weekly report of the previous week's staff bank usage, so we can make sure that matches what we have actually approved at that time. So we've achieved a reduction in our weekly spend of temporary staff costs from around £60,000 a week back in February to last week, showing £30,000 a week, so 50% reduction. And then the CSU overspend linked in with that has gone from around £40,000 a week back in February down to £8,000 a week. So it's a significant saving each week, and we've sustained that for the last 2 weeks now, showing that we have started to embed that process in. And obviously would hope to then move that forward into the rest of the financial year and continue with that with a 50% reduction throughout the whole financial year. We've also noted that there's been a reduction in our staff unavailability from 30% down to 28%. So that's resulted in an additional 22.5 whole-time equivalent of staff available to care for our patients. We've linked it to some of our KPIs, so around our patient harms through datex and severity of incidents, and there's been no increase in the reports or severity within those. And we've looked at our red flags within our roster metrics and seen that there's been no increase in red flags that have been raised during that process. So this is a graph just to depict that. So the red line shows where we started on the 26th of February, all the way down to the sustained 2 weeks of that, around 8,000k for the last 2 weeks. And what we're looking to do moving forward is look about what we're predicting to be either over or underspent, and then how can we close that gap so we've got a more accurate picture moving forward. So what went well? So obviously having access to the production board and having everything in one place instead of pulling it from different reports has significantly helped with us. We've had sort of a prompt improvement and engagement with the ward leaders and matrons around that has been really helpful. And that whole team approach around that constant refinement and constant improvement, the whole team have wanted to refine this further at each opportunity. We've got that immediate engagement from the ward teams, and that feedback from them. And obviously we need to be mindful, and there's those concerns around the sustainability to run our wards and our services at that time for a sustained period, and the impact on patient safety and patient experience, which are obviously at the centre of all of our thoughts. So then looking at what we do differently, so if we were to do this again, we'd look at including overtime and our basic variable pay into the process from the beginning, and we'd look at also differentiating between the overtime and our basic, noting that there's two different costs for these variable pay options, and one may be more palatable and more sustainable for the organisation and the CSU than the other. In terms of our next steps, we're looking at embedding that more long term into our staff bank process management, introducing standard work for overtime and our basic shift requests, which we've had the opportunity to work on this week. Looking at working with our partners in workforce systems, both in workforce systems green that look after us, as well as workforce intelligence, to look about whether we can get that same oversight on overtime and add basic shifts that we do for staff bank, in terms of having that really clear timestamp on when those shifts are put in, so we can put that real scrutiny in and make sure that process is followed. And then finally, just embedding the overtime process into all the teams, particularly within our CNS and specialist teams, where overtime is more widely used just due to the complexity of the work that they do and the specialism that they need.
Fantastic, Mark. Really great report out. And so good to see some of the visual data showing how much progress you've made and the power of getting that information to allow you to make some of those decisions. So brilliant. Well done. Well done. So we'll keep moving. So we'll move on to MMPS now. We've got Andrew, Jane, and Laura. Thanks.
Thanks, Phil. Good afternoon, everybody. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Andy Aldred. I'm the Clinical Director for MMPS, presenting with Jane and with Laura, who will introduce themselves. So just to kick off, we've put a slide up about the production board. So we've worked together with Vinod and Tom. Whilst we don't use Health Roster Live for our rosters in MMPS, and therefore there's some kind of data issues with this, I wanted just to use this as an example of, even though there are some data issues, we've been able to continue to use the Workforce Production Board to target some activities which have been helpful during the week. So just a comment there about, even though there are data quality, sometimes the information is good enough to be able to progress some improvement actions. So I'm going to hand over to Jane, who will talk through the work we've been doing in MMPS through the week, and then I'll come back towards the end. So over to Jane.
Thanks, Andy. Hi, everyone. Hello, my name's Jane Andrews, and I'm the Acting General Manager for MMPS. Could we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So we just wanted to talk through the actions that we took in our approach to RPIW this week. Like other CSUs, we did feel this was quite rapid. And what we did is we stood up RPIW huddle to focus on our standard work. We already had bronze as part of our daily workforce planning anyway, but we enhanced this, and in that reviewed our OPEL rating. We did a significant deep dive on our weekend roster work, as that's where most of our variable pay comes from, because we work on a 5+2 basis with our workforce planning. We have standard work set up in our weekly operationals meetings, and we introduced some monitoring as well. From that, the LIM tools that we used are in the infographic there. And it's around setting up the board, using the production board, using our standard work in our huddles, but also being aware of the quality metrics and the performance. So just diligently monitoring what our quality metrics are. And some of those are on our dashboard in our office, and that's around medicines, incidents and harm, and the timing of our readans, and understanding the impact of this work on the discharges, which then impacts on the organisation. Our daily management, as I've said previously, we have a standard bronze huddle already in place, and we've had this since COVID. It's something that we carried on, and this is our daily workforce huddle. We have daily review of our workforce, and we have this in advance of bronze, and our operational leads feed into our OPEL scores, which you'll see next, and that then forms our bronze conversation every day. Those bronze huddles can be 2 minutes, there can be nothing to discuss, everything can be fine, or there can be 20 minutes if we're dealing with issues and escalations. But also in our daily approach is the weekly operational lead meetings. So these are our operational leads who run our daily services and coming together each week to plan ahead in week what the staffing issues are and looking into the weekend. The biggest thing we've done this week is that deep dive into our weekend work and looking at what we've had routinely gone out as gaps and paid overtime for, how we can pull back on that and actually mitigate. And that will then hopefully drive down the overtime spend and our variable pay. We've had significant engagement this week across our teams. We had a senior leadership team briefing. We've worked with our operational leads, our daily huddles that are already embedded within our teams, and set up an additional bronze huddle at 10 a.m. with our improvement leads, our HR and finance colleagues as well, which we felt this week has been really, really helpful. We've really appreciated that engagement with those teams. Our clinical and operational leadership group meeting this week, we've talked through them, the RPIW and the work we're doing, involved everybody along the way, and also CSU wide, sending out that midweek summary. What does it mean for our staff? And we'll focus on that again later today. So this is our OPEL dashboard. This is something that was developed internally in MMPS during COVID. When I'm doing Bronze Command, I like to see this. I like to see, and I say we are sunshine yellow. I think sunshine yellow just makes us feel good. Looks lovely to see that across the board. And within that are our escalation framework, which is to the right-hand side, our level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Where we have, I won't say struggle, but where we've had some challenges with this is with our operational leads thinking if they put a 1, they're going to get asked to mitigate and help across the board more. So they felt a bit scared to admit that they're a 1 and they're okay, and 2 seems to have become a bit of a default. So we've done some unpicking on that this week, and that's an example of where 2 of our operational areas have said, yeah, we're okay, we're going to put a 1. So that was really, really helpful for us. So our outcomes, what have we learned so far this week and what have we put into practice? So the standard work for the weekly operational lead meetings, and that is looking forward in week, into weekend and into the following week. Reviewing the OPEL scores and looking at the rationale for those. And in our tracker and in our variable pay, we do have some agency spend, but we have put into the tracker hard stop dates for those and the reasons for those being there. And I think it's really important that we consider those moving forward. We have focused on our staff, on our health and well-being. It's a really difficult process to go through, and to take everybody with you is really important, but being really conscious of that. We have mitigated some overtime this week, and some of that was around asking a member of staff to move a late shift from St James's to the LGI, which may feel quite normal to bed holding CSUs and nurses, but that's quite alien to pharmacy. So a complete change in practice for us there. It's really important as well that we look after our staff, and we've got our link back into our clinical psychologist to help where needed. And throughout all this, maintaining safe staffing levels to be able to provide that safe service. So we've had some really, really good engagement across our CSU, really good mutual aid, and looking at agile working moving forward across 7 days. It has allowed us this week to mitigate 33 hours of reduction in overtime spend just this week alone, which is really good for us, and to continually monitor that and be aware of what impact that's going to have. So we just need to ensure that the service is still safe, that we are still able to turn around the discharges for the wards. The one thing that we're really, really proud of, with which the graph is in the bottom, is we'd already looked at a lot of our overtime expenditure last year, and we were really proud that up to the end of the last financial year, we had already achieved over £100,000 saving in our overtime spend in the year 23-24. We have got more work to do. We do appreciate that, and we'll continue to use the Ready Reckoner to help us do that. I'm going to now pass over to Laura Works, who is our new head of nursing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks for introducing me. My name's Laura Wicks, new head of nursing for MMPS. So we've reflected together on what went well over this last week, and we feel that it's been a really good opportunity to stop, pause and focus on the work that had already been undertaken over the last year, and do a deep dive into what we can find this week. And we created a safe space to do that together, having open, honest and transparent conversations together as senior leadership team, but also for any of the other MMPS staff who had questions or concerns. As a brand new member of the TRI team, I was able to bring some fresh eyes and ask the silly questions to try and understand how things work in MMPS. But we're also really grateful for the insight, the challenges and the support from the KPO improvement and finance teams who joined us throughout the week. We feel we've managed the expectation of the week really well together as a team, and we're particularly proud of the engagement and the collaboration from our teams within MMPS, who've continued to maintain their core commitments and work processes throughout the week. I'm going to pass back to Andy now.
Lovely, thanks, Laura. Final slide for me, just to say a sum up and what would we do differently. So some reflection on whether we could digitalise our production board. We use the traditional production board, which worked well for us, but that was difficult to share across our CSU, and continue to use existing dashboards as Jane has said, particularly our OPEL scores. I think, as Kirsten said, preparation for the week was a real challenge. It was a pretty stressful Monday, I think, right across the organisation. Just some reflections there on that piece. And in terms of key learning, I think my personal experience and doing these RPIWs previously, paying attention to the detail is really important in quite often across kind of financial metrics. It's not until you get into that detail and really pay attention do you start to find some of the areas you can focus on. It's been really helpful to have fresh eyes, not just from our improvement leads, but also from Laura, who's come into our CSU. This is her first week in our CSU. It was really helpful to have a fresh pair of eyes. And then finally, just on what we're seeking to do next, we've got good daily controls in MMPS that we've well established, but actually what it's allowed us to do is to focus on that medium-term look and that weekly forward look. So we want to embed that with standard work and continue the engagement across our CSU. And Jane's mentioned the health and wellbeing support of staff. These are challenging to run, challenging times. So we've paid quite a lot of attention to the well-being of our staff, and I think that's really important as an organisation. We think about that as we kind of as we go forward. So a good week, a challenging week, lots come out of it, and let's continue to take our staff with us. So thank you.
Great, brilliant. Thanks, Andy, Jane, Laura. Really great. Using what you've already got and building on it. It's really some really important lessons to see, and interesting first week for you, Laura. So thanks for that. Okay, let's move on then to TRS. We've got Gareth and Diane.
Thanks, Phil. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Gareth Dobby. I'm the General Manager for TRS. As we went into this week, we started to have a look at all the tools that were within our gift to use to handrail us through the week. And the two tools that we picked out to sort of set us on our way were the Daily Management 6 Steps and the Daily Management Learning Tool, which really did give us a handrail and allowed us to work with our teams to get best success from the week. We took immediate communication to the wider team, which I think has been said from the other CSUs as well, working with our matron teams and our business teams to start the messaging and the communication across the CSU. And Diane will talk about a little bit more about that later on. We shared the production board with our nursing teams through their already existing meetings to kind of get that understand piece. And some of this had already happened previously, but this was then kind of worked through the remaining teams within our CSU. We shared the immediate communications with our business teams, our lead clinicians, and our medical rota coordinators as well. We don't have the luxury of a sort of medical rota coordination team within TRS, So we have to work directly with those registrars that have this as part of their daily business. So actually getting them involved a little bit more acutely was really good. And then we had meetings with medical workforce to establish some of the lessons learned from the previous work, which Priyanka touched on from my time in urgent care. So our approach to daily management of this particular issue for this week, I think what it told us, and it's been said already, we had some really good daily management in place already, but we shouldn't rest on our laurels. And Diane, again, will talk about that in the next couple of slides as we concentrate on some of the nursing pieces of work carried out this week. And we utilise these meetings to limit that change in our existing battle rhythm to manage the impact on our team. So to give them the time to think about this and the space to really drive down into what they're doing as part of their daily management. I think it's really important that we kind of ring fence that time for them. And I'll hand over to Diane now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diane Armstrong. I'm Head of Nursing in TRS. So on the slide, whilst they're quite difficult to see, are just 3 examples of some tools we've developed to help us this week. As Gareth's already said, we had some good daily management principles in place around our staffing. We have a morning bronze huddle at 8:15 where we look not only at our site, our CSU, but at our staffing issues for the day and the night. What we've taken this is an opportunity to delve deeper into that. And so to the left-hand side of there is some standard work we've set up for both our operational matrons and our patch matrons on what we would expect each day, looking at our staffing for that day and any immediate risks, but any new risks that are coming up within the next 48 hours that we've not already identified. The middle part of that slide shows you a spreadsheet we've developed. We saw from our previous predicted hours in our variable pay ready reckoner and then our actual hours, there was a large variance and we were trying to understand why that was happening. So what we're now doing at the moment for nursing is we're looking at our predicted each day again, and then looking at our actual each day so we can identify really quickly if we've seen a variance and understand why that is, which takes you down to the next box, which is anything that is approved over and above what we've already predicted will be logged on there. So it gives us a track so we can see each day why something may have changed, be that for acuity, be that for sickness, that we've had to put shifts out. But so we have a real clear track of what's happening. And again, it shows us the next 48 hours. We're also now recording as part of this RPIW, but going forward, previously we see all day texts as a tri-team and we do discuss any moderate harms, but we're now within this spreadsheet logging any harms that have happened in the previous 24 hours so we can see if there is anything there that matches in with our staffing. And then to the right of there is a 6-week tool that we've developed, which is standard work, but actually just ties in with the existing roster principles of how we should be approving rosters. And that's in terms of annual leave, overtime, hours owed, hours owing, study leave. And one of the things we found this week was, whilst we had some really good processes in place and some real grip, we have seen some variations in our study leave and what has been approved over and above mandatory study leave, and we need to look, and that's what we've been doing this week, at how we can make that fair across the CSU and also plan that more effectively so it fits in with our variable pay and our safe rosters. So what went well, I think, as others have said, we've had real collaboration from our teams, particularly around our senior teams who, came in on Monday to the new documents and had to get started straight away with embedding those and speaking to teams, and everyone has been open to that and up for the challenge. They've pulled together and they've understood the importance, and some of that has come, as Gareth had mentioned, some of those communications we've had. I've met with my senior nursing teams regularly this week to explain what we're doing and the reason why we're doing it, but also to, keep that message of this is around patient safety, it is around our staff health and well-being, and we're not going to take risks that would affect that. Whilst the finance is important, we need to keep that at the forefront and have those discussions. Our teams have come together, we've encouraged them to come forward with the ideas and empowered them of how they can work differently, to look at staffing, to look at how we manage our rotas. And I think, as Gareth said, we had good standard work already. We were already looking at our roster KPIs and our metrics. We'd already done some real deep dives into some of our wards, which we were planning to extend out throughout the CSU. This has kind of brought that all to the head a little bit quicker. But everyone has been open to that focus challenge and how we can continuously improve on the work we've already got in place. So what would we do differently? So I think most people, a theme here is around the short notice that we had. we all understand that, but given if we were to do it again, some extra time so we could get that team engagement, the communications out earlier, I think would help. Our key learning is around, we do have engaged teams and we need to take that on board. You know, we've learned some things this week. We've made some mistakes around some of our communications on things we were going to change in rosters, and we've held our hands up and we've met with our teams when that has happened and talked through that. We were really keen to ensure our teams, you know, change can feel very uncertain and unnerving for people, can it? So we were really keen to listen to our teams and talk to them and understand how this was making them feel, and really keen to involve them and empower them so that this wasn't something they felt was being done to them, that they felt they were part of this. And it's shown us our opportunity for further improvement going forward. So our next steps, so we will continue the PDSA work we've done around nursing. There are some similar things going on with our medical workforce, which Gareth's been leading on, but we've focused within this presentation on the nursing side of things. And we will review our sustainability at the 30, 60 and 90. The tools we're using at the moment have taken up a lot of time this week to populate, and will continue to do so kind of for the next 6 weeks. But what we hope is that 6-week tool I showed you, if that is used for our new rosters before they are approved, we'll see those rosters really tying into the roster metrics, and therefore the problems should reduce, if that makes sense. The work we need to do ongoing each day to the rosters should change. And so hopefully we'll see that as we have those 30, 60 and 90-day check-ins.
Fantastic. Gareth, Diane, brilliant work. Really good to hear you again using what you've already got, building on that, identifying some of the things that we weren't aware of, as it were. So I think that learning is right, and some learning themes about the process as well. So really good to see. Let's keep going then. Our final team from women. So we've got Becky and Joanne.
Thanks very much, Phil. So my name's Becky Musgrave and I'm the Head of Midwifery and Nursing for the Women's CSU. Okay, so looking then at actions that we've taken, including our sort of daily management approach. So I think firstly was really to sort of, as others have said, really engage that the leadership team and being really open and transparent about what we're trying to achieve, and using the sort of the tools and the reports that were already available to us. But I think, you know, the daily production board has been really useful. So we've developed something ourselves, which you might not be able to see the detail of with the size on there, but essentially is looking at the staffing at a CSU level. So we can see all of the individual ward areas, but then we're looking at, are we sort of above or below stop the line accumulatively at the bottom? And we've used some sort of visual cues on there so that we can see the areas that are highlighted as yellow are areas where we can see we're at below stop the line, but we have got some flex within the staffing overall to cover those areas. So that's been absolutely instrumental, I think, this week in sort of looking at the staffing. We've learned how to use SharePoint, which, so a massive shout out to Ruby Ali, who has had the patience of a saint with me in teaching us how to use that well, and just really establishing that sort of cadence with it, really. So we've had daily huddles with all of the leadership team, so all of our team leaders, matrons, patient flow coordinators and ourselves, and I think that's been really helpful. Using the workforce production board that Vinod and team have developed, I think has been transformational, really, in terms of, I think, as others have said, having all of that information together in one place has been really helpful. And just having that standard work, and then the sort of Gemba walkarounds, and just hearing from staff what's working well and what's not working so well. So our approach in terms of daily management is to have the daily huddles and then sort of weekly meetings, and really embed this process into our daily management and standard work going forward. So what we've been doing is looking at sort of the 24, 48 hours ahead, and sort of trying to predict acuity where we can do, and then but also looking sort of prospectively at 4 weeks ahead, and really using that opportunity to flex the staffing within the CSU as much in advance really as we can do, because we absolutely know from sort of feedback from our teams that actually if they're going to move from one area to another, they'd rather know about it sort of in plenty of time rather than last minute reactive changes. So I think that's really allowed us to do that. And we're also going to use this tool before we do the level 1 and level 2 roster approvals to look at service level, actually where are the opportunities to flex within the service, as well as you know, to look at the unavailabilities there as well. I've also developed a midwifery decision management tool in terms of where we've got unavailabilities or shortages, to be able to sort of look in priority order at what are the risks and benefits of each action, in terms of redeploying staff, pulling from mandatory study day, non-mandatory study day team leaders working clinically, etc. So that just again standardises that approach across the CSU. We've just finalised the SOP for medical staffing, rota escalation and processes as well. And I think in terms of engagement, it's been really important to be transparent and have that regular feedback, having a really clear agenda, and I think really reiterating the assurance around quality and safety, and that none of this work is intended to put quality and safety of care at risk in any way, and never would be, and that will always be our priority. But it's looking at where are the opportunities to make improvements where we can do it safely. So in terms of outcome, just really more rigour around those roster metrics. And I think the important thing to say for myself and for all other members of the team, I think what this process has really shown us was that even though we thought we had a really good idea of what was happening with all of the rosters, that actually there were some gaps there. And I think it's around being honest about that, recognising that, and not being critical of that, but actually looking at, we've identified that, but actually moving forward, how do we make those improvements? So I think that's a really important thing that that we've certainly taken on board within the CSU. And I think that deep dive using the Workforce Production Board into the unavailability and the identification of improvements, some of those are within our control, and we have got plans of how we can progress those. But some of those areas we will need sort of wider support from an organisational level with those as well. There has been quite a lot of identification of defects, and I think listening to the other presentations, some of the things about variation day to day of staffing, where we've not been over establishment, but we've been, you know, we've maybe had sort of 10 above stop the line one day and 2 above stop the line the next day. So looking at how do we actually sort of get that sort of equity across the board, and that will help with our patient flow as well, and things like our inductions of labour. Sometimes we don't start an induction of labour because we know there's not as many staff coming on the next day or the night shift and things. So just looking at you know, how we can sort of level that out a little bit better to improve our flow as well. Really good sort of daily rhythm and oversight. And I think one of the key things that this has generated this week is lots of conversation from team leaders, matrons, ourselves of different areas, just looking at actually how can we, you know, make improvements around our sickness rates, unavailability, study leave, you know, really standardise those approaches, and that real emphasis on prospective management of the workforce rather than reactive. And as I say, lots of opportunities for standardisation across the CSU, and lots of ideas generated to improve the sort of future state and sustain the improvements that we've made. So I'm going to hand over to Jo there now.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Jo Haig. I'm the General Manager for Women's, and very similar to other CSUs, I think, you know, what went really well, the teamwork, it's been absolutely fabulous this week, the amount of people who wanted to be involved and have been really engaged and have been asking about what's going on and have listened to each other. I think we had an earlier on in the week, we had a shift that we did have to escalate because our plans didn't go as according to plan. And that process was really smooth and supportive. And it was really reiterated to us that this isn't a failure. This is around quality and safety, and escalation and getting shifts filled where we need to is absolutely appropriate. And that felt really supportive and inclusive and was a really, really good process. Give lots of reassurance, I think, to the teams. SIM as a tri-team and HR and medical deployment have done a load of ad hoc drop-in sessions this week, and they've been absolutely fabulous. So really wanted to recognise them as well and say thank you, because it really helps us along the way. There's been so much information taken in 1 week, and sometimes a quick 20 minutes of someone telling you about it just makes all the difference. And the improvement team that we worked with, the really appropriate levels of check and challenge and just questioning or telling us some learning from one of the other groups. And I think it's really kept us on track. So I think it's been a real team effort and we've really appreciated that. And I've just put a little bit of a graph in, a little bit of a table there about what we've managed to save over this last week and what we're projecting in the future there. Exactly the same as everybody else. I think the timing was challenging. We were given loads and loads of tools to support this work, and I don't think we were on top of them right at the beginning of the week. I think it took us to midweek to really know what we were doing with them and use them. And as we mentioned around some of those ad hoc sessions, I think for us, having some of those maybe as a more online learning might have been more useful to us. So I think we've noted that those tools are fantastic, but we just were a little bit behind the curve. And then realistic about our time commitments, we were a bit late to cancel some of those external commitments that we really wanted to go ahead. But actually, this did take a lot of time this week, and it needed it. It's been absolutely fabulous, but it needed the time. But we were maybe on a bit of a back foot around cancelling some of those commitments as well. And that's it from us. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Becky and Joe. Brilliant. So look, first off, just want to say that certainly in Leeds teaching hospitals, we've never done an organisation-wide RPIW. So massive congratulations to all of you for taking part in what's actually been a big PDSA. I've never heard in any of the presentations I've been to outside this organisation of an organisation that has done what we have just collectively done in the last week. So I know it's been, I won't quote some of the Alex Ferguson remarks about the kind of week it's been, but it's been a challenging week, shall we say, and the discomfort that has been palpable in the week that many of you have expressed, and I'm really grateful that you have expressed that discomfort, because if we hadn't felt uncomfortable about doing what we have collectively done with 48 hours notice launching into this, we should actually be more worried about our culture of empowerment, fairness and collaboration. So the first, I just want to say a huge well done. If you are not working at the weekend, please get some decent downtime, because you all absolutely deserve it. If you are working at the weekend, thank you very much for soldiering through that, because I know everybody will be completely exhausted and wrung out. That said, we've heard from 5 of our CSUs, wonderful work, and I know all of the colleagues have been working incredibly hard. I really want to thank the improvement teams for the support they've given the CSUs. I want to thank all of the CSU leadership teams, and actually, as all of you have described, right down into those frontline teams. If it wasn't for your empowering and supportive leadership, we wouldn't have got what we've got today. We haven't fixed it. Of course, we've not fixed it. The purpose of an RPIW is not to fix something, and certainly not on the scale of the challenge we've taken on this week. But what it really has done, I think, is mobilise what's the best in this organisation, the best in the people of this organisation, to be able to face our challenges with courage, with honesty, with enthusiasm, with commitment. So it's really humbling to have listened to the last hour. I do hope you're all very proud of what you've done. We do need to keep going. We do need, as many of you flagged up, we can't do an RPIW every week. We can't put this amount of time and effort in. And so getting this into, as Virginia Mason would talk about, chaos to cadence, getting this from how it's felt, particularly in the early days of the week, through to something that runs as well as it's run by now, but day in, day out, week in, week out, will allow us to make the progress we need to keep control of where we are, keep control of our own financial destiny, and keep patient care right at the heart of what we do. I'm just absolutely thrilled. Priyanka, Kirsten, Mark, Andy, Jane, Laura, Gareth, Diane, Becky, Joe, on behalf of all the colleagues that you've presented today, huge well done. Massive congratulations to everybody. Let's keep going. We really can nail this. I know we can. All of you can provide the wonderful leadership you demonstrated through this week. I'm hugely grateful for everybody stepping up at such short notice to do what we've done. As I say, I feel immensely proud of this organisation. I think we will continue to go from strength to strength. So I'm going to finish there. I hope, as I said, you get a chance to have a bit of a rest after a mammoth week. Let's keep at it and really look forward, of course, to continuing the rhythm of this, and therefore hearing about what will get in our 30, 60 and 90-day report outs. So thanks very much, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Great to see everybody. Well done. That was amazing.
Thanks a lot, everybody.